What's up, guys? Welcome to the podcast where we can listen to trans and gender non binary voices telling us their story in their voice, reminding us that each of us is not alone.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Not Alone. I'm here with the wonderful, the beautiful Gabrielle Claiborne, and we've had her on multiple times. We've actually been discussing her journey to becoming the awesome person she is. And the last time we spoke, we were talking about Nicole. We were talking about basically introducing Gabrielle to her and what happened there. But Gabrielle, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, set the stage, and we'll kind of go from there.
Thank you, Darshan, and thank you for having me back. I always enjoy our conversations. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Claiborne, and I use she, her pronouns. That particular conversation, Darshan, was one where my oldest daughter, Nicole, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need to get together because we need to talk." And so when we got together, we actually met at a Starbucks, Darshan. Here in the local area of Atlanta. And when we met, she proceeded to say, "I don't know what's going on with you, but if you're not willing to drop this charade, then I will have no other choice than to not have anything to do with you for the rest of our life." And when she said that, Darshan, my heart sank because, me and my kids had always been very close. I had supported them in all the endeavors that they wanted to get plugged into in their life. And so I was a very engaged parent with them, right? And to have my daughter look at me and say, "Hey, if you're not willing to, change and do and live and show up in this world the way culture expects you to show up, the way I am comfortable with you showing up, then I'll have no other choice than to have nothing to do with you moving forward." And, leaving that conversation that evening, I didn't even know if I would ever see my daughter again. And for those of you who are in the audience and you have kids, imagine your child looking at you and saying, "Look, I don't know if I'll ever have anything to do with you again." And it was because of it's because of who you are. And that's what happened with me. So after that meeting, I left at a very discouraged space and not knowing if I would ever see her again. And so after that, weeks, months, and a couple of years actually went by, Darshan, where I didn't have any contact with her. And this was despite me reaching out multiple times, reassuring her that I loved her and that I wanted to continue our relationship. And I understood that this could be is definitely something that she was not expecting. She didn't sign up for, yet I still wanted to, move forward in our life together as the parent-child relationship that we once had. So almost 2 years later, on Father's Day, we reconnected. I was at the spiritual community that I was attending, that I came out to, that was actually very integral in my journey of authenticity, allowing me to try myself on for the very first time. She showed up at church that Father's Day, and I'm leaving the service that morning. I get a text from her saying, my kids call me Da because my oldest child, could not say Dad. All she could do was say Da. So my 3 kids adopted that salutation for me. So she says, "Da, I'm outside." And I freaked out, Darshan, because Nicole had never met me. I had already moved through some medical procedures. I was wearing a very low-cut, short dress, and in these high heels, and my hair had grown out. I started coloring it blonde, and all of a sudden, I panicked because she had never met me, and I had no idea what she was going to think. Right when she sees me for the first time. So after having conversations with a few friends that were close to me there in that spiritual community, they reassured me. They said, "Gabrielle, everything is going to be all right. Take a deep breath and go see your daughter, see what your daughter Nicole wants." And so I walked outside, and as soon as I turned the corner and I saw her standing at her car, I just ran to her as much as I could run in my heels to her and just grabbed her, and we just fell in each other's arms weeping because I had not seen her for that period of time. And she said, Da, I just wanted to come and tell you happy Father's Day. And when that happened, I immediately realized that to the best that my daughter could, Darshan, she was trying to find a way to reconcile, me coming out to her, this new reality in my life, this new reality in her life, and what that could look like moving forward. And that was a very important milestone moment for me. That's one that I will always remember because that was the beginning of the reconciliation journey with me and my oldest daughter. And so as a result of getting together that day, we made a commitment to spend more time together. We went out to dinner for a couple of times after that. And then that following Christmas, she reached out to me. She says, hey, I would love to get together for Christmas. And it had been almost 5 years, Darshan, since I had any family celebration during Christmas. And it was because, they were grappling with my new iteration, who I was becoming, right? And so we met at Starbucks again. And when we got there, we sat down and she said, I just kind of want to let you know that I've really been doing a lot of thinking. I've been doing a lot of processing. I've been doing a lot of grieving around, what's going on in your life, because I feel like in many ways I've lost a father. And I know that our relationship will never be what it used to be. And when she said that, Darshan, as a parent, my heart sank again because I felt like I was disappointing her. I felt like this was going to be an obstacle that she couldn't get around, she couldn't get over, and the form of our relationship would change. But then she said, but I've decided that I want to move forward with you and we need to find out what this looks like for us. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the next step could look like. I don't know what a year from now looks like. I don't know when I get married, what does that look like? When I have kids, what does that look like? But she says, I do want to step into this and travel this journey with you the best that I can. But she said, but in order for me to do that, I need you to answer a question for me. And I said, what? Anything. She says, what do I call you now? And when she said, what do I call you now? I immediately thought, she is trying to find a way to meet me where I am, right? She has grieved the loss of the relationship that she once knew that we had as father-daughter relationship. And I know for daughters, their relationship with their father is very important, and how they show up in their life, right? In their relationships, in their forthcoming relationships with their spouse, and how they manage their family and that kind of thing. The support from their father is very important. And so she had grieved the loss of that relationship, right? And so we have been, over the course of the last few years, trying to navigate, all these difficult moving parts and pieces that, a normal life would bring to this type of relationship. Unfortunately, a few years ago when she got married, I wasn't invited to attend her wedding because she felt like me being at the wedding, the conversations would be more about me and not about her. And she would be, that is the day for her to be the center of the tension. And I totally understood that, but I had to grieve that, Darshan, because the last thing I wanted to do is miss those very important milestone moments in my kid's life. And one of those was my daughter's marriage, and since then she's had 2 kids. And haven't been able to be there for the birth of the kids, one because of COVID, the other one because she's just grappling, with the relationship that we have. So it's been definitely a journey, Darshan. It hasn't been a sprint, and we continue to have difficult conversations to this day.
It is such an amazing story, and It makes me want to look up the definition of the word redemption, because I can't remember if redemption means you have to have done something wrong, or it just simply means it's a new story, a new iteration. It
Yeah.
really speaks to my lack of vocabulary, so I apologize for that. But
No.
Assuming you're smarter than me, do you know which one redemption means, first of all? And does it apply in this case?
Well, for me, it's more reconciliation.
That's a much better word. Reconciliation. There we go.
To me, redemption is being redeemed from something you did that was wrong.
Right?
Right?
So there's a wrong connotation. Okay.
And so for me, this was not something that I did. Well, I think, to be honest with you and everyone, I could have managed this a lot differently and a lot better. And I know this in hindsight now. But, coming out to her was a reconciliation moment for me.
Okay. So let's explore that reconciliation moment, because you told me about this moment a few conversations ago.
Yeah.
And I got the broadest smile when you told me about the moment that you rushed to her outside the church and hugged her, because it was so sad, so depressing when you mentioned that she may not have wanted to have anything to do with you.
Right.
And the idea that you guys came together was so wonderful.
Yeah.
But
that she instigated it, by the way.
Yes. I think that's the best part of it. So, and again, to be fair, I think that it's a journey she's still going through from what you're telling me. So it's not like everything's over. It's not like a movie where life suddenly just starts anew. It's still getting those building blocks in place and building this new relationship. There's a history where she obviously has these amazing moments with her dog.
Yeah.
And she's trying to figure out who Gabrielle is now. Does she call you Gabrielle, or what does she call you? What did you decide?
Well, here's the thing. Just a couple of months ago, her oldest had his 3-year-old birthday, and I was invited to the birthday party, which was the first time. This was another significant step for us, which was the first time that I not only met the youngest grandson, but also met her spouse's family and friends and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, this was the first time that I'm showing up in this space. And so, they were using their own terms for me in front of the kids so that the kids could start adopting. Okay, this is who this person is, right? And I told her, I said, Nicole, I really would like to be referred to as Gigi by your kids. That resonates with me. That title resonates with me. So she said, okay, you're now Gigi. So we're still trying to determine, what the titles look like and sound like, if you will.
Okay, fair enough. So we don't know what the title between you and Nicole is, but you are Gigi to at least your grandson.
Yes.
Okay, so I did want to ask, and this is a terrible question to ask, but I'm very curious. The first time when you ran to her, what was her reaction as to what she thought of you, what she thought of your outfit, how awesome you probably looked?
She was all smiles. And I think that, beyond the shock and, the unknown that she was going to experience at that moment, I think more than anything, she was elated to finally reconnect with her parent,
Yeah.
So regardless of what I looked like and, all the different things, all the different changes that had happened in my life up to that point that she had not had privilege of knowing, I think the bottom line was she just wanted to reconnect with the person that she loved and raised her.
Oh. I have to also ask, because I'm a very nosy Parker. Between the time that she said, I may not want to have anything to do with you for the rest of my life, to the moment where she hugged you, how much Facebook stalking did you do?
Well, we were not connected on social media.
No. Okay.
No, we were not connected. And I was very intentional in doing that, Darshan, because I did not want to expose any of the family to anything that they were not ready for. So I was very conscientious and respectful with that, being mindful that, as much as this has been my journey, it is as much of their journey as well, and that they have to be ready to be seen with me in public, and that is still the case to this day, So I was very mindful of not putting myself in their space and forcing them to come to terms with me, other than on their own terms, if you will.
It reminds me in many ways of a breakup with a long-term relationship, and then possibly reconnecting in the future.
A significant relationship.
I should have added when I said long-term, I did intend to mean also significant, but thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
A significant long-term relationship. And I know that whether or not it's a smart idea, you do go through certain periods of checking in. Just pure curiosity, whether it's a long-term boyfriend, girlfriend, or in this case, daughter. So I'm actually impressed by the fact that you were able to hold off and she was able to hold off. Well, possibly. I don't know if she held off or not, because we don't actually know the answer to that question. But you were able to hold up.
I will tell you, Darshan, those weeks, months, and years between that time of that last conversation and that moment in that church parking lot, there were many sleepless nights. There were nights where I cried myself to sleep. There were moments where I wondered, what is my daughter doing? Is she safe? What's going on in her life? Because I literally missed almost 2 years of my daughter's life as a result of it, right? And that's not something. I mean, it's one thing for them to like travel abroad and what they're doing and you're in contact with them and you're not seeing them. It's another thing to have this risk of potential fear that you may never ever see them. That's a whole nother set of issues in different contexts, if you will.
Yeah. I also think that this podcast should really be sponsored by Starbucks, apparently, because they have brought your family together multiple times, and I think that's amazing.
Multiple. Yeah, I think I owe Starbucks some money, in addition to what I normally pay for my drinks.
For those people who don't know, the usual payment to Starbucks is you get a drink of some kind, even if you're there for 15 minutes.
Right.
That's your rent for the time you're gonna take. Yeah. So it sounds like, Gabrielle, you've paid rent a lot of times.
Yes.
For being there. Let's talk, and I want to explore this because it's such an important milestone. Yes, please go ahead.
Can I say one more thing, Darshan?
Of course.
And I think I may have alluded to this on a previous episode, but I want to say this because I can't gloss over this, because this is very important. Okay. And this is especially important for folks who are navigating similar waters around, sharing significant parts of themselves with family members, and how to do that in an equitable and respectful way. Right. So when I first came out to my youngest daughter and then came out to my wife told me, she says, do not tell the older two kids, because this will devastate them. Okay. So I honored that request. And for almost a couple of years, I did not come out to my oldest kids, Nicole and Jordan. All right. And I did this again at my wife's request. And so what that did, Darshan, is when Nicole found out about me, that immediately sent a message to her that I didn't trust her enough to share this information with her. And I can share it with my youngest daughter, but I can't share it with her, and I can't share it with my son. And so as a result of that, she felt a sense of betrayal on top of not knowing what had been going on in my life for all those years. She felt a sense of betrayal. And I want to encourage folks to understand that if you have anything important to share with your family, with your friends, you do this in a very timely and strategic way so that everyone knows about that part of you in a reasonable time frame so that they don't feel like you trusted one person over another. Otherwise, you set yourself up for a long reconciliation process, which I have done with my oldest two kids. Kind of wanted to throw that out there.
I think that's a wonderful suggestion because for you, those are lessons learned. From my perspective, as a third party having nothing to do with that journey you went through, I think you were between a rock and a hard place.
I was.
And it's the I have to imagine you're going through these feelings of confusion anyways in terms of what should I be doing. You see a voice, even if it's not a voice that you like, it's the voice of your wife that you've trusted for so long telling you this is the right path ahead. You're completely confused. You're still discombobulated. You follow that voice only to find out that it wasn't the right fit. But
it was more her path as opposed to my path, Darshan.
Right. So while I 100% hear you, the only thing I can say is I would give myself more grace for choosing the path that you did, only because on what basis would you have made a different decision? But
well, here's the thing. I recognize now that I was doing the best that I could do. Like I've said many times before, Darshan, there is no roadmap for this journey. So you take every step that you take, not knowing if it's the right step, not knowing if it's the right time, not knowing what the ramifications would be, right? All of those unknowns are involved in every courageous step, right? So I give myself grace enough that I was doing the best I can. But in hindsight, I try to set others up for greater success, in their journey of disclosing this type of information to the people that they love and are surrounded with.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is that, and I have the word disappointment written down, and I can't remember whether you said that that Nicole was disappointed in you or you were disappointed in something that happened, but there was this sense of disappointment that you discussed during the conversation we've had today. Is that sort of a path you found that you had to go through to get to where you are? That I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy. Well, not Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's the 5 phases of losing someone. And I feel like bargaining is one, but I feel like there is disappointment in there. And it's just one of those journeys you need to cross. Is that true, or there are ways around it?
I don't know if I would use the word disappointment. I think
maybe I mischaracterized
the word or words that I would use would be guilty. I felt guilty that, I felt guilty, but I also felt like I had to do this because I felt guilty because the information that I was sharing, I knew that it was going to probably hurt or confuse, the people that I'm sharing this information with, right? And it could result in me with the results that happened with Nicole, right? I didn't see her for almost 2 years, right? So I knew that, these decisions, this disclosure of information could potentially result in that. So I think, there was guilt around that. There was a little shame around that I wasn't honest sooner, than I was. And as a result, I had to forgive myself for that. To our earlier conversation, to say, hey, I am actually doing the best that I could with the information that I had to work with. I was trying to honor someone that I love very much and respected very much and, spent much of my life with, at the same time honoring myself, right? So all of those balls were in the air and I was trying to make sense of them in an equitable way, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times we drop a ball, or a ball gets, we catch it right before it hits the ground, or we get discombobulated a little bit. So I think for me, it was just like all the stuff swirling around that I had to navigate not only navigate from the perspective of interaction perspective, but also the emotions that were coming up in me, navigating and pushing through and embracing and forgiving myself for, some of the emotions that I was actually experiencing.
Now, one of the again, I'm not a parent, but you talked a lot about this experience as a parent and wanting to experience those moments, those important moments, those milestone moments
Yeah.
with your daughter, and how you haven't had the opportunity to do that because of different things. You talked about the wedding. You talked about not being there for your first grandchild, and you finally meeting your second grandchild, and your first grandchild on the third birthday. Um, did you communicate with them prior to, like, were you able to see the process and just not the culmination, or have you been separated from them this whole process?
I got photos, I got text updates. Occasionally I got pulled into like a real-time video, with them. But, there's one thing about getting that kind of staying connected that way. It's another thing to reach out and say, I want to touch you. I want to feel you. I want to experience you. That's a whole nother experience, right? I'll never forget the first time that I met my oldest grandson, which was maybe almost 2 years ago now. And, I held him in my arms for the first time, Darshan. And he was probably at the time 9 months old or so. And even though he really didn't know me and that kind of thing, I felt an immediate connection with him, right? I felt his heart beat against my heart. And that was a life-changing moment for me, to hold my first grandchild in my arms authentically, right? And to be celebrated for that, to have been allowed access to do that, right? That was a big thing to me, because it'd been so long. I'd navigated all the other milestone moments where I could not participate and couldn't be a part of. And then all of a sudden I was allowed to come in and be a part of something like that, So there was a lot of grieving that I had to go through up to that point. But that moment, it was almost like that moment made up for everything.
It was the first moment you were Gigi.
Yes.
We can, as always, keep going. I have all these questions that are lined up, but we usually try to keep these, as you know, to about 30 minutes or so.
Sure.
But before we go, Gabrielle, 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Could you talk a little bit about how you help people through this process, whether it's through companies or otherwise, and how can people reach you?
Yeah, sure. So I do support my community on a couple of different fronts, Darshan. One is providing competency training for organizations who want to create cultures of belonging for trans and gender expansive individuals. And we work with a myriad of markets, all the way from corporate America to spiritual communities and everything in between. Okay. And then I'll also provide personal coaching support, life coaching support for individuals who are actually navigating their own early steps in their journey of authenticity, coming out to family, coming out to their employer, coming out to their spiritual community, just kind of what that looks like for them. So I do that on those 2 levels. And if you want to find me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Our website is transformationjourneysww.com.
Gabrielle, thank you again for being on.
Thank you, Darshan.